Good morning, good day, good afternoon to all the participants who are coming into the room now. Welcome to this webinar from the Home Gardens for Resilience and Recovery Network, HG4RR. We'll just start very slowly to allow everybody to hear the beginning of the introduction and the presentations. And we're very happy that you can join us today, wherever you are. This, as you may know, is part of a series of webinars we're hosting on a monthly basis. It seems that most people have arrived now, so I suggest we start. My name is Tilman Brook. I'm a development economist based in Germany. I'm hosting this webinar series, and today we have two guests, Sweta Banerjee, a nutrition specialist with Welthungerhilfe India, and Anshuman Das, a food activist, who is not online yet, but who should be here with us shortly. But we'll start anyway. Today's topic is nutrition from garden to plate, improving diets through sustainable access to safe and diverse food from own sources. I've seen the presentation. It's really visually very beautiful, as I think, and it's also content-wise very comprehensive. I hope you will enjoy it. First, a little bit on the background and some housekeeping announcements before we start in earnest. Next slide, please. And I'd like to start with a small advertisement. We do live in times of Corona. It is a difficult period, and especially for our colleagues in India and South Asia currently, it is particularly difficult. And we hope that all your loved ones are as safe as they can be. I'm part of a research project which studies the impact of the Corona pandemic and the government restrictions where they exist on people's lives and livelihoods. It's an online survey. And if you have 10 or 15 minutes, I'd be most grateful if you could fill out the survey at the website livewithcorona.org. It's a research project, it's anonymous, and we're very grateful for your help and support, either in filling it in or in sharing the survey link with your colleagues, friends, and family for us to be able to generate responses and research insights into how the pandemic is shaping people's lives and livelihoods, including for food security, which of course is a real issue. So thank you for your help with that project. Next slide, please. The Home Gardens for Resilience and Recovery Network, HG4RR, is a collaborative effort from colleagues in many different countries around the world. It started off with a particular focus on South Asia and Southeast Asia. And here you see a list of the organizations that are part of this network. It's both researchers and NGOs who are all interested in home gardens and kitchen gardens and community gardens, which can serve as an important resource for food security and nutrition. However, we feel not enough learning and not enough M&E and not enough research is done on these topics. And so the idea is to bring together experts from these different communities, from different countries, from different organizations, to share their learning and to promote these relatively easy to implement interventions, which often can have very positive benefits. And probably many of you listening are also part of that community. And it's very exciting that we can share so many insights through our network, which of course with the pandemic has gone online. Next slide, please. Today we have two guests, as I said. First, there's Sweta Banerjee, who's a nutrition specialist with Welthungerhilfe's India country program. She has worked in public health nutrition for over 25 years, and Sweta holds a master's degree in dietetics and public health nutrition. Her current multi-sector project with Welthungerhilfe links agriculture, natural resource management, and nutrition security. Next, please. And we also have Anshuman Das with us, who is a food activist who has worked for over 2 decades as a food researcher and trainer. He's currently working on programs related to agriculture, environment, and economic development in South Asia with Welthungerhilfe. He's contributed to a framework for integrated farming system and nutrition-sensitive agriculture in India, and has traveled extensively to conduct trainings and consult organizations, including the United Nations and the German Development Cooperation and other agencies. Very excited to have you both here, and you have some very interesting things to say. Very briefly, some housekeeping rules. We will have your shared presentation first and take your time delivering it. It's good to hear in your own words what went well and some lessons learned. Then we will have a Q&A. We have two features here. We have a Q&A box where people can type their questions online, and I would encourage people to type their questions to the speakers in the Q&A box. That allows me to keep track of what's happening. Once questions are answered, we'll move them into a different channel on the Q&A box. If you have more questions than we have time to answer them, which sometimes happens in these webinars, don't worry. We appreciate all your questions, and we'll make sure we'll answer them in writing afterwards. So come back to our website afterwards, and you can see the written record of all questions answered there. Feel free to also use the chat to introduce yourself or to share your contact details if you like. But for me, it would help a lot if you could put your actual questions to the speakers in the Q&A box, because then I only need to monitor that one tool of this Zoom thing. Yeah, so that would be great. If you have any technical questions, please send a private chat to Gwen, who manages this recording, or email her at moyles@igzev.de. Just a small reminder, the talk will be recorded and posted on YouTube. I hope that's okay with everybody. That way we can share it with hundreds of other viewers after the event has taken place live here. So next slide, please. Without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Sweta and Anshuman, and I really look forward to your very beautiful presentation. Thank you for taking time to be with us and for sharing your lessons learned on nutrition from garden to plate. Over to you.
Thank you very much, and a very good evening from India. Though we are now under a very stressful situation, but sharing our experiences gives us all the motivation and takes us away from all the tension and stress that we are in. So thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to share our experiences. So we will talk about a nutrition garden, where our objective was to bring from the garden to the plate. So that is a very important part of the garden, that are people consuming the food that they are producing. So with that, I start my presentation, and we will split our presentation between the two of us. So after a certain time, Anshuman will take over. Okay, next slide, please. So this project, which we call the Nutrition Smart Community, is like a dream. This is a picture that we dream of, the village that we dream of, where no child sleeps hungry. So that is the motto we start with when we start working in our villages. Next slide, please. So these among other things, while to make a village hunger-free, to make a community malnutrition-free, so we have four interventions. Out of these, nutrition garden is one very important intervention that we are doing in these villages. So, and these gardens are done through the mothers of malnourished children, and they are supported to grow their own gardens and help to plan their own meals. Next slide, please. So why did we think of a garden instead of a regular agriculture project? Because we thought that dietary diversity is a very important component, especially if we look at hunger and nutrition. So it is, we are targeting the women and the reproductive age group and the children. So micronutrient deficiency, which is a very, very big problem in India and also in Bangladesh and Nepal, consumption of vegetables, particularly consumption of the different food groups, at least 5 food groups out of the 10 food groups specified by FAO, it is very important that we have to have gardens, because these gardens will help the mothers to grow their own food and also bring it into the family pot for the rest of the family. Another very important component here is the use of chemicals. We are looking at malnutrition, so we need to reduce disease incidence. So we need to make sure that the community has access to safe food. and there is less dependence on markets. Dependence on markets makes the diversity, reduces the diversity in the diet. So our objective was to reduce dependence on market, to reduce, to enhance chemical-free safe food. Another observation was that in the community, in the villages, we find a lot of starch-based diets. That is mainly because starch helps them to fill their stomachs, and that gives a feeling of satiation. So there is this tendency to consume more and more starchy food and less of vegetables and other animal products or fruits. Finally, we thought that if we can use the land around the household, we also address the hygiene of the family. Because when these spaces, the space outside the house is just left open, garbage is dumped on it, there is water accumulating, which gives rise to waterborne diseases, gives rise to disease like malaria and dengue and other things which are very rampant in this part of the world. So we thought if we can use that land, not only will we get food, but we are also using the waste. We are the organic waste, we are using the waste water, we are keeping the environment clean, and we are also supporting health. So nutrition gardens became a very important component in our design, project design. Next slide, please. What would we call a garden? Basically, we don't have any specific size or design for a garden. We want to utilize all available space, be it around the house, be it in the ponds, the embankments, the farm bunds, whatever, wherever space is available, it has to be used to grow food. So utilizing the back space, the space, living space, all the space available around the house should be used for growing food. It is also possible to integrate poultry and goat rearing. So the idea is, since we are focusing on the 10 food groups, we also need to consider the consumption of animal proteins. So in that case, our kitchens should also have a form integration with the animal products. And usually animal products are thought of as a big poultry or big farm. But here it is just 3 chickens or 2 ducks or whatever it is. It is for the family consumption along with the garden, which also contributes to the pest control of the garden, and also the diversity to the food. So animals add a lot to the garden. And the other aim is the garden should be able to provide 150 to 200 grams of green vegetables or fresh food per day throughout the year. So usually we find gardens which are very seasonal, but our focus was to ensure that the diverse food are available to the family throughout the year in the quantity of at least 150 to 200 grams production every day. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, so no, the one before. Yeah, so what we achieved, we tried to look at our achievement through measurement of minimum dietary diversity. So what we found in the 2 years that we worked, over the 2 years, we could, obviously the gardens were not available for the entire 2 years. We had to start, and then we had 1 or 2 seasons where we could actually help in setting up the systems. So we find that if we look at the slides, I think a part of the slide is not visible, perhaps. The first 2 are from Nepal. So you would see that the baseline, this is the baseline of minimum dietary diversity women. That is the first one. And the second one is the minimum dietary diversity of children. So if we look at, we have data from 3 countries, Nepal, middle one is India, and the bottom one is Bangladesh. So if we look at it, we see when we started, we had this small little bar which showed us the minimum dietary diversity of more than 5 or more food groups consumed by women. And towards the end of the project, we see this, it has nearly reached 80% of women consuming 5 or more food groups. In India, also we see a similar trend. It is not as high as Bangladesh or Nepal, but the dietary diversity has improved to more than 50%. And in Bangladesh, it has improved to more than 85%. So we see that the dietary diversity, due to the nutrition gardens and the associated knowledge and awareness, has increased to this great level in such a short time. Even for children, we see there is a huge increase in the diversity of their diets or the children's diet. In the 3 countries, similarly, first is Nepal, and then India, and then Bangladesh. Though in India, it is not as much as Nepal and Bangladesh because there is a lot of vegetarianism. So achieving 5 groups is quite a challenge. But in the other 2 countries, we have seen that the improvement is really amazing. Next slide, please. Now, when we try to understand why has it improved, why has minimum dietary diversity of women or why minimum dietary diversity of children improved, we look at it in terms versus the nutrition gardens. So the women who have improved their nutrition dietary diversity are mostly the ones who have their own gardens. So we see this, you may find an exception in Nepal where they already had a large number of population having their own gardens, but these gardens did not provide the diversity. And of course, there was the lack of knowledge. But in India and Bangladesh, we see that people grew gardens only seasonally, and the dietary diversity was also low. Only during those seasons, they would consume a diverse diet. So we see from this graph that nutrition gardens have contributed to the change in the dietary diversity. When we compare with the own production against minimum dietary diversity of women, one thing we realize that if we grow our own food, we are more prone to consume it. So here we have considered animal food. Animal food from own source, when that has grown, it has come into the diet. When we have incorporated animals into our home gardens, that has also come into our diets. So you can see from the graph, the brown graph of animal food consumption has improved because it is coming from our own source. Similarly, when we look at vegetables, we have looked into 4 groups of vegetables: the green leafy vegetables, the yellow and orange vegetables, the other vegetables, and the pulses. So out of, we have 8 types of crops in the garden, but out of that, at least 4 or more crops, vegetables that are being grown now and what it was earlier, we also see a big difference. So when it is growing in my own garden, my tendency to consume it also grows. Along with this, we have also done a little bit of work on the staples because during the lean period, people spend most of their time, money buying the staples from the market. So as a result, during the lean period, the consumption of animal products, the consumption of fruits go down because they are spending their money on buying rice or wheat or maize. So we have worked a little bit with the communities to improve their staple production by working with them on millets, the traditional millets, on corn and other things, so that in their main agriculture field, they don't leave it empty. So maybe they have 1 or 2 crops of their cereals and the rest of the time it is left empty. So that is the time we have promoted them to grow their own millets and other cereals, minor millets, so that when brought together with their cereals, it becomes, there is a less dependence on market. So earlier when they were buying staples for 4 months, so now with the incorporation of millets and other things, where they are probably buying their staples for less than a month. So that is how the money is saved, and we ensure that the dietary diversity, if they are not able to grow in their gardens, is they have access to the market. So this shows us that the more we produce our own food, the greater the chances of improving the dietary diversity. Next slide, please. So what has really worked? What have we done along with these promotion of these gardens? We have engaged women as owners of the nutrition gardens. So they are the one who plan what to grow, what to cook, and what to feed their family. So the women are the owners of, and this has really made a difference. Cooking demonstration of low-cost recipes with locally available food. So this is also something we had to show the community, because a lot of indigenous knowledge is lost. And a lot of times people don't know that certain leaves or stems can also be eaten. In India, in Bangladesh, we eat, and in Nepal, we eat different parts of the plant. So if we have the pods for the peas or beans, but we also consume the leaves and the stems, so that that also gives us a lot of diversity. So we did a lot of cooking demonstrations to teach people that the pumpkin plant, we can also eat the flower, we can also eat the stem, we can also eat the leaves apart from the pumpkins. So these are things we had to demonstrate, and also call out traditional knowledge from the community, because there's a lot of knowledge which is like lost now. So we promoted different competitions and ceremonies and other things on cooking, so that people would come out with old recipes. Promotion of uncultivated foods and traditional recipes. This was a very important component, because lot of food, especially when we look at the plate in the developing countries, a lot of it is collected from the farm, from the ponds, from the forest. So the weeds are eaten as leafy vegetables. So if we use too much of weedicides or pesticides, we are destroying these natural sources. So we encourage the that these uncultivated food should be consumed, and if we want to maintain our dietary diversity throughout the year, we need to prioritize these traditional uncultivated foods and look after our natural resources, our forest, our water bodies, so that there is this constant source of food, and also minimize or refrain from using chemicals in the nutrition gardens. Growth monitoring of children. This helps the mothers to get convinced that yes, the behavior change is making a difference in the lives of the children. Their weight is increasing. So we encourage them to get their children weighed and see the growth chart and see evidences of the nutrition garden that they have been growing. Skill training on garden techniques. The mothers are trained on these different techniques, which Anshuman will talk about. Linkage with government schemes. Governments have, in all the 3 countries, there are various schemes. So the project cannot provide everything to the community. So we link them with the government schemes of employment, agriculture, irrigation, fisheries, animal husbandry, horticulture. So under the employment scheme, the government also gives daily wages for growing your, working in your garden, for setting up a fence or repairing the animal shed. So if it is a 2 days wage labor, then the government pays for that. So you do your own garden as well as you get paid for that. So that is something which is very useful. And finally, we develop champions from within the village who actually demonstrate, because you cannot access to all the families together in the village at one time. So we develop these champions who through their farmer field schools demonstrate their own gardens and also become teachers or trainers within the community. Next slide, please. Yeah, so here I hand over to Anshuman to go into more details of the nutrition gardens.
Yes.
Yeah, Anshuman.
So hope I'm audible. Great. So I will go very quickly to a few techniques that we use. So Shweta has already given a very good background. So in a nutrition garden, we focus that we should have at least these kind of plants like fruits, leafy vegetables, legumes, tuber crops, spices, and medicinal herbs, and poultry and livestock. So if we have these 6 types of plants and poultry and livestock, we roughly cover all the food groups that is prescribed by FAO. And definitely we are focusing on more local seeds, and depending on own seeds and own input, we are encouraging gardeners to keep their own seed. And of course the very important point is to recycle household waste and also yellow water. So these are the basic principles of a nutrition garden that we follow. Next slide, please. And very important thing is, see, we found that learning technologies and techniques are not very difficult, because I mean, if you are in a rural setup, if you are already a gardener, or you are engaged in farming, or even if you are not engaged in farming, probably, I mean, others in your neighbor is engaged in farming. So learning techniques are not very difficult. So we found that planning is the key skill to develop a good garden. So much of our capacity building events, much of our training events deals with identifying own resources and gaps in the food group. Like, what are the food groups that is missing from your plate, and which are the season that you are not having enough food, enough diverse food. So we focus to fill that gap, with what are the resources that you have, what are the changes that you can bring in your garden or your production system to address the gap. So, and basically we develop a seasonal calendar at the end of the training, that what to grow and when to grow. So we realize that your garden and my garden, even if we are staying in a same village, even we are neighbors, can be strikingly different, because your capacity, your resources, your need is different than me. So your design of garden will be definitely different from me. So we try to make people understand how to plan, how to how to think about the scope, how to think about the gaps, how to think about the capacities, the resources that you have, and how can you optimize your optimize use of those resources. Next slide, please. So our major focus is on these 10 food groups. Can we really grow these 10 food groups throughout the year? If not 10, at least 6 to 7 food groups throughout the year. And a good garden is basically a set of good management practices, starting with crop management. So we try to arrange the plant in such a way that the shortest toward eastern and tallest toward western, and also crop of different families are mixed together. Crops of different root depths are mixed together, so that by using all those methods, intercrops, relay crops, mixing crops, and all this. So I'm not going into detail of that, because I think these are all known to you. Next slide, please. So from crop management, we see there are a few examples. that even in a garden you can use various kinds of design. Generally, in India, Nepal, and Bangladesh, all the three areas, it is dominated by small farmers, and uh, small farmers had very limited amount of space. So how can you organize your garden? How can you manage your space in a multi-storied way to include many, group of families, many group of crops together is a key challenge. So we work with different, vertical types of design, horizontal types of design by mixing crops. Next slide, please. So you can see a couple of examples here. And you can also see a couple of examples here. This is specifically in a area which is waterlogged. You can also, even in Bangladesh, it's very popular in the waterlogged region. You can also grow floating garden. So garden which is, on the water hyacinth bed. You can grow, garden even in a flooded condition. You can use, pots and all this. Our major focus is consumption. Our major focus is not, selling, surplus to the market. If you have enough consumption, you can also include few cash crops, in your garden. Including trees are also very important. Like we say that at least these, four types of crops should be there to address your nutrition related issues, like papaya, moringa, banana, and citrus fruit can be an example of which is must for a nutrition garden in this part of the world. Next slide, please. So crops also include trees. Definitely we should produce our own manure and own pest repellents by vermicomposting, by liquid manure. We can also use chicken shit, goat shit, of course cow dung, cow urine, all this to, you know uh, optimum utilization of the waste that is produced in your garden and in your even kitchen waste are used to make compost. So, and we also try to, teach that what are the how can you use the existing resources like chili, wood ash, ginger, neem leaves to make pest repellents. Next slide, please. So producing your own manure and pest repellent is very important. A few examples. These are actually diagrams from our training manual, which is entirely pictorial. And through this manual, we introduce various techniques. Next slide, please. Crop management, space management, managing your pests and diseases, and also managing water is very important, because in many places of India where we are working is very dry. So using wastewater, kitchen waste, doing mulching, using drip irrigation, pitcher irrigation are very important techniques. So dealing with water is not only making water available, it is also about your crop choice. How can you select your crops carefully, the crops which are, which can withstand kind of drought, which can withstand water stress. So selection of that is also very important. Next. So that's a very important thing. I think when you think about water, it always comes to our mind that, okay, we have to make water available. So let us dig a pond, let us do something to make water available. But in dry areas like in Rajasthan of India, I mean, it will be water stress area. So this is a given condition. You cannot make water so easily available in that area. So you have to deal with that actually. So this is a simple example of pitcher irrigation and mulching. Mulching can be of various types. Mulching can be with straw, with dry leaves, even with anything which is living, which is a kind of we use cover crops a lot to do mulching. Next slide, please. So idea is you have to cover your soil so that water is not evaporated out of the soil. No, before that. Before this, please. Yes. And the most important thing is to include poultry and livestock. We have to be very careful by integrating poultry, because poultry can be very destructive to crops as well. So we need to understand. We need to develop various ideas. How can we restrict the chickens to fly in the kitchen garden and destroy everything? So there are various methods, various interesting designs there we have tried out. And the picture above is from Nepal. So in Nepal, people have also tried kitchen fisheries. So this is a small pond where not only crops, in the kitchen garden space, you can also grow fish. And you can raise your chicken over a pond so that the pond sheets, the duck sheets are used to grow zooplankton for fish. And you can also grow azolla and all this. So there are various ways how can you integrate livestock and poultry. This is very important in terms of, not only in terms of consumption, but also in terms of earning little more money, because extra egg, extra chicken can be sold to the market. So goat and chicken are often called ATM, because in the rural area, if you need money, you just take a chicken in your hand and go to the market and sell it off. It's ready money. So if you have chicken and goat, it can also act as an ATM, apart from fulfilling your need of nutrition. It is also possible to include beekeeping, mushroom cultivation, and all this in the garden. Next slide, please. So yes, so a couple of examples of from our manual. Yes, so very simple things. No. Before this. No, before this. We reached to thank you. Before this. Yes, here. So no. I think the mouse got little mad, but not here.
I'm sorry, I'm having internet issues.
I understand. It happens. Yes, please stay here. Yes. Great. So it's, yeah. So the cow urine and cow dung is a very important component. So you have to organize your goat shed in such a way that you can use that. Often in rural India and rural Bangladesh, rural Pakistan, rural Nepal, goat shed is the most kind of dirty place in your household. So we try to change that. So if we can change our shape of the goat goat shed and cow shed, definitely we can use the cow dung and cow urine better. So they're very good source of nutrient for the soil and the plants. I also shown here simple methods of growing chicken just below kind of a mosquito net. So so that you can prevent the chicken to go out and fly out in the garden to destroy everything. And also a simple goat shed. Goat needs a little bit higher kind of resting place. So goat likes a kind of a little bit uplifted place to be rested on. So for goat, you have to take care of that. So the basic idea is you can include everything. It's not, I would not say it is not very complex. The ideas and designing a garden is not very complex. It's very simple, but Only thing is you have to be a little creative to include all this. The next slide, please. I think I would stop here. So I think I could give you a little bit of idea of how creatively you can design a garden. And there is no fixed rule that you have to do X plus Y plus Z. In garden, I mean, 2 plus 2 might not be always 4. I mean, if you can work very well in garden, 2 plus 2 can be also 5, can be also 6, can be also 8. But if you do a bad design, 2 plus 2 can also be 0. So that's a very important thing I wanted to share with you. So over to Sweta to, kind of conclude this session.
Yeah, thank you, Anshuman. Here in this slide, we have just put together all that Anshuman discussed. So every nutrition garden has all these components. First is the crop management, the various types techniques to be used in uplands, in waterlogged areas of Bangladesh, in dry regions of in central India, in flooding areas of Nepal, because we work in the Tarai region. So various different kinds of geographies and different kinds of problems. So different techniques are used: floating gardens, sack gardens, multi-layer crops, kite gardens. So these are various techniques we use, and these techniques have come up from the community itself. It's not that all of it was designed and suggested by us. It is the community who came up with ideas, and we helped to build upon these ideas. The next part of the kitchen garden is the pest and disease management. So Anshuman spoke a lot on that. So the animals that we include into the nutrition garden are not always for consumption, but they also contribute to the pest management and improving the soil conditions as manure and other things. Then is the livestock management, the various things that Anshuman spoke about, using the cow urine, maintaining the cow shed, poultry farming, azola pit, goat and piggery farming. So these things, goats and other things are not always consumed by the family, because the goat is too big an animal to cut and eat at one go. So goat is usually sold, but the goat shit is used. These are things we incorporate. So it's an income source, as well as it is contributing to the farm, to the nutrition garden, because we have to make sure that the nutrition garden is low cost. If it is costing too much, it will not become accepted, and people will not take all the efforts. So we have to ensure ways and means of using their existing resources and making it low cost. Soil and water management, we already spoke a lot about this. So it is not only making water available for the plants, but it is also managing the wastewater around the households. And finally, the post-harvest, which is also very important, because yes, of course, there is excess production in the garden which cannot be consumed by the family, so they sell it out. And but we don't start the garden with the objective of an income generation approach, but automatically it happens, the community starts selling part of their production, whatever is excess. So helping them with preserving these, there is no refrigeration, there is no cold storages. So we have developed, our partners and community, they have developed this idea of zero energy cold chamber, where the vegetables can be kept for about a week or 10 days. So from one market day to the next market day, they can store it there and sell it. The most interesting thing that we have seen here is, because these gardens are all organic, there is a big market even within the village. So many a times they don't even have to go to the market to sell their stuff. They will have their neighbors and others buying it, because they all know it's chemical free. So that is a big advantage from the nutrition garden. Anyway, we also focus a lot on post-harvest. So like storage and also food preservation, drying of foods or pickling of foods, because in one season there may be excess production. So if we can preserve it for another off season and ensure the diversity of the diet, so that will be useful. And the community also can sell after they have been able to do some kind of preservation, especially like tomatoes and other things which start growing in excess during the time. So these two things are also focused and very important part of the whole concept of nutrition garden. Yeah, next slide, please. Based on all our learnings, we have developed two manuals. One is a nutrition sensitive integrated farming flip chart. This is a pictorial flip chart which Anshuman was showing. This is used for training the community, for training mothers to train other farmers who are interested. So it is a pictorial flip chart which has pictures on one side and instructions for the facilitator on the other side. So it is a very simple, very basic kind of a tool that helps to disseminate knowledge and information. And a lot of our knowledge and information is in collaboration with what the community already knows and their traditional practices. So this method also generates a lot of discussion, and even new things are come up which are adopted. The other one is the nutrition garden good practice. These are the different techniques covering the 5 main components of the nutrition garden, how to do the different kinds of crop management, why we need, what is good about, say, one component, like if we talk about rhizome basket, just growing spices in a basket. You can hang that basket anywhere in the shade. You can grow ginger and turmeric, which saves a lot of money, and also you can sell out a lot because you can actually grow more than 1 kilo of ginger in one basket. So so what is a rhizome basket? How to prepare a rhizome basket? What are the costs for preparing it? So when is the season when to start it? So these kinds of instructions are included with every kind of model. So if it's a sack garden, what is the benefit of a sack garden? How to make a sack garden? What is the costing? Similarly, kite garden. So there are these different types of activities that we have done in the garden. We have compiled it into a manual, which is the nutrition garden manual. So currently we have 2 manuals, and I have also shared one e-magazine which has links to these manuals. So if you're interested, you can access the manuals. And we also have links to some videos where our community is talking about their experiences and what they have done in Bangladesh, in the hill tracts, in the northern part of Bangladesh, in Mohanganj, in India, central India, in Nepal. So there are little interesting videos also which you could see and share with your community. Next slide.
We could allow a few questions in a moment, Sveta, from the audience. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, is that fine? So
yeah,
thank you
fine.
so much, both of you. It was a really wonderful presentation. I love the images you had drawn and really illustrating your points very well. I loved at the beginning, unfortunately you didn't have much time to spend on it, but the vision of no child going to bed hungry. It's a beautiful picture. Yeah, when you sent me your presentation before, I spent quite a lot of time looking at that. Yeah, it was visually very nice. And I think your presentation brought across that despite having or maybe because of having a diversity of approaches, you can have a lot of impacts and very strong impacts. Yeah, and I suppose we didn't talk about sort of cost-benefit ratios, but I imagine it's quite powerful and quite persuasive. Yeah, that you can really change some very fundamental dimension of human welfare and well-being with these interventions. So I think it also highlights the importance of documenting these impacts, whether it's through M&E work or whether it's through research. Yeah, I think there's still not enough of an understanding in the community at large, quite how powerful these approaches can be. I think maybe you're preaching to the converted here in this room, yeah, but I think maybe there are other rooms where we should be and sort of bang the drums of these interventions and how important they are. There is a really lively debate in the Q&A, and I really appreciate all the questions. We will come back to you. We'll share links on our website. We'll share this presentation on our website. We'll share the slides. So you can come back to the HG4R website in a few days and find a lot of materials there, including, I think, Sweta, some of these guidebooks and guidelines that you have produced, right? They are available, if I understand correctly, to share, right? They're not to sell, so to speak, yeah? I would like to pick from the many excellent questions, a few, given the time, and several centered around gender issues and within the household, and asking, is it perhaps a burden on women, on mothers, if you expect them to do this as well? And what is the role of men? So this relates to several questions that several people in the audience asked. What would your responses be to that?
Sweta, you take up, I will add later.
Okay. Basically, when we start discussing with the mothers, we first do a nutritional assessment where they see that their child is malnourished. And then they want to know what they can do to improve the nutritional status of the child. So during this time, we talk to them about various the food IYCF issues. Apart from that, a very important component is this growing your own food. So if you want to improve the diet of your child qualitatively, you need to add so many different kinds of food groups. And these can be only made available if you produce it at your own level. So, and the gardens are not very intensive. They are like whatever the mother can. She doesn't have to have a huge big garden. She doesn't have to have a very organized garden, but we call it the food forest. So that kind of a place where she just sows the seeds and just takes the produce. And then she makes a small pit where she just dumps all her waste from her kitchen. So that automatically becomes her compost. So these are things not many mothers have told us that it is difficult. And once the mother starts, we also have the whole family getting interested in it. So when they're washing their hands, they make sure they go to the garden and wash their hands, or they try to help the mother with the gardening, with whatever support she needs. So the mother starts it, the mother owns it, but it becomes gradually the family contributes to it.
Particularly when people start earning, selling a bit, men become more interested. So yeah, so that is the point. There's a turning point for this entire thing. So gradually, if you can do good, gradually men will also be interested. And all these things are supported by kind of a set of exercises which we call PLA, participatory learning action, games and all this, which helps in behavior changing. So we also try to include men in those games and exercises. So we try to include men, but I must confess that it's not always very, very successful. But there are also examples where men are taking a leadership role in this entire thing.
Yeah, thank you both for the answers. Maybe just to dig a little bit deeper very briefly, does it take away time? From where does the time come? I'm sure the women are not idle, yeah? So if they spend more time on the nutrition gardens, what do they spend less time on?
We haven't come across this as a big issue. Yes, there are seasons when they are engaged in the agricultural work, especially in India, where women are work as agricultural laborers on their own farms. So that is the time they do spend a lot of time away from home. But once the garden starts, it doesn't need a lot of time every day. So once it starts growing, it's growing. The initial period to set it up, to put a fence, to plan it out, that is the time it calls for a lot of attention. But once it's growing, it can survive on its own with just the water coming in and yes.
And also our aim was, I mean, as I said in the beginning, that planning is a very important part of it, the most important part of it. So we try to design in such a way that what you can do. So it might start from a very small, like according to the possibility, according to the scope, according to the need, and according to the capacity of that particular household. And when they start seeing result, I mean, it automatically grows, and people make make time to spend in the garden.
And
but
then
you
they
need
start
not,
making profit also.
You need not start very big. So we often too much bothered about having a very good garden and a very productive garden, but that is not the idea to start with.
Thank you. We're almost at the end. I'd like to give you a chance to maybe each say one thing that you found particularly important that either you hadn't had a chance to say or that you would like to wrap up with. Maybe in reverse order, could I ask you to just comment briefly? Is there a final thought that you would like to share with the participants before we have to close? Anshuman?
Yeah. So maybe two things I wanted to share, because I was also following the question and answer. So yes, much of my design is basically from permaculture ideas. So you can also look in permaculture garden ideas, and you will get a lot of ideas from there as well. That is one. And the second thing is, I mean, school garden can also be a very important space where children can learn, and also, vegetables can go to the midday meal, and, even the excess vegetable can go to the families. But school garden design will be little bit different from nutrition garden design. That we can discuss maybe someday, some other day, because school garden is in such a space, in such a place where taking care 24 hours a day is difficult. And there are also holidays, there are also weekly holidays. So you have to plan your garden, you have to select your crops accordingly. And you probably need to feed a large amount of children from a little space. So you have to focus on crops which can produce more food, which can produce more biomass, quote unquote. You can also maybe depend on the plants which for whom not only fruits but leaves, stems, flower, everything can be eaten. So design will be a little bit different.
Yes, thank you, Anshuman. That's an excellent point. Sveta, would you like to give your concluding thoughts?
Yeah, I think these gardens worked because we worked with the mothers and or focusing on the 10 food groups. So as the mother learned, her need to have access to the food grew. And when the need to access food grows, we had to show her a source. And her own garden, without spending money on it, she has all the diversity. So that is something gives her a great feeling. So that helps to sustain the gardens, and the ownership of the gardens is very important. So that is something we need to focus on, the women and the education along with the garden, not just how to grow the garden, but on nutrition.
Yes, thank you so much, Sveta. I think that's an excellent point to make as well. And I think we found that in research as well, that it really matters that these programs help to empower women and give them a scope in which they can make decisions and contribute to their family's health and well-being. And that's in itself probably a very empowering feeling, but it's also correlated with other positive action by the women. So thank you for drawing attention to that. Thank you both for joining us today. Thank you to our many very lively participants and very active. I'm so sorry we didn't have enough time to address all your interesting questions live. We will do so on our website, so please stay tuned. We will upload an answer file addressing your comments. We will upload a recording of the session so you can share it with colleagues. We'll upload the slides and some of the training materials. And it remains to be said that we have a next webinar in the HG4R series on the 15th of June, 2 p.m. Berlin time, gardening under challenging conditions, concerns experienced in Niger and Bangladesh. And I hope you will enjoy that as well. And you can join us there. Please spread the word about HG4R. I think there's a lot of good work being done by our fellow participants and network members. And I think it's always valuable to share these insights and to share them with the community and to make home gardening stronger and more nutritious for all. Thank you and have a lovely day. Stay healthy.
Thank you.